It is Tigers game day in Omaha, baby.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Plus, we also are on YouTube as well. So don't forget that you can also check us out on YouTube. Just search Locked On LSU in the search bar. Hit that subscribe button and you won't miss a single second of your Locked On LSU content. My name is Caroline Fenton, and you can follow me on Twitter at CarolineFenton1. You can also follow along with the podcast for updates at Locked On LSU. Big day today, big game today. Before we get into the specifics, I got to let y'all know that today's episode of Locked On LSU is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. The Tigers in action in Omaha today against the number one overall seed in Wake Forest today. First pitch at 6 o'clock. Tennessee, Stanford just wrapped up. Stanford got an early lead, 4-0 lead on the Vols, but the Vols turned it around late in the game. Tennessee gets the win 6-4, avoids elimination. Stanford is headed home. Tennessee will play the loser of the Wake Forest LSU game today. So Tennessee will play Wake Forest tomorrow. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I want to do a little bit of a recap of the weekend before we get into a preview of Wake Forest tonight. So let's start here. Saturday night, LSU, Tennessee in action in game one. Paul Skenes on the mound for LSU, Andrew Lindsey on the mound for Tennessee. And look, whenever I talk about games in which Paul Skenes plays, when he's your starting pitcher, I feel like it's kind of a cop-out that I'm like, okay, well, it was Paul Skenes was pitching. What do you expect? But I mean, that's really all that I can give you, because that's the truth. Because that's really, it is what it is. When Paul Skenes is on the mound, you have that certain level of confidence that I don't think any other team in America has with any other pitcher in America. I mean, Paul Skenes did what Paul Skenes does. Paul Skenes did what you expect from Paul Skenes, and it is absolute dominance. It's almost unfathomable excellence what you get from Paul Skenes week in and week out. It's like, I've said this so many times before, and I will continue to say it. It's almost like I take him for granted while continuing to remind myself throughout the game whenever he's on the mound, I have to take advantage of this opportunity that we have being able to watch Paul Skenes pitch in an LSU uniform. I have to savor this moment. I have to just, breathe it all in and enjoy every single pitch that Paul Skenes throws for my team. So even while I'm reminding myself that, I still don't think it's giving Paul Skenes enough credit, because I just don't know if the amount of credit that is due to Paul Skenes is even humanly possible to give, because he is just that good, and he continues to do that, and it was in no exception against Tennessee in game one in Omaha on Saturday night. Paul Skenes went 7 2/3 innings, gave up only 5 hits, walked 1, struck out 12. And just that stat line alone is so incredibly impressive. But when you start to dig a little bit deeper, 46 of Paul Skenes' 123 pitches. 123 pitches, first of all. That is a ridiculous amount of pitches for a guy to stay at the level that he was pitching at. Normally once you get past the triple-digit mark, you really start to decline. And you could see a little bit there, Paul Skenes giving up maybe a couple more hits than he was used to. You could see he was slipping, and I don't even feel like that's fair saying that. It's the same thing whenever we were talking about Dylan Cruz being on a kind of a cold streak at the plate, but he was still hitting 420 something. Like, that's kind of when I say he was slipping a little bit, getting a little bit more contact on the ball than you normally can expect from Paul Skenes. But still, even at 100, 110, 120 pitches, Paul Skenes was still throwing balls at an incredibly high level, and 46 of those 123 pitches on the night in 7 2/3 innings were all either 100 or over 100 miles an hour. And that doesn't even take into account the number of pitches that were 99, the number of pitches that were 98 miles an hour. It was just so freaking impressive. And I think that some of the excellence of the best, of like the elite players, the elite coaches, is the ability to adjust. It's one thing to be able to do it. I mean, that is a feat in and of itself. It's also another thing to be able to do it, analyze it, adjust, and still execute at an incredibly high level. And that's something that Paul Skenes said that he did. He noticed, so normally he starts with the fastball and then gets into that slider. He noticed that Tennessee was starting to swing the bats early at the fastball, starting to get contact with the ball, which still became outs, but they were still getting contact with the ball. And you don't really want to, rest on your laurels there. So Paul Skenes started to adjust. He started to get into the slider first. He pitched what is called pitching backwards, throwing the pitches that you normally pitch later in an at bat first, and then finishing them off with the fastball. I thought that was a brilliant adjustment by Paul Skenes, and just adds to how good and how excellent he really truly is. So, I mean, I could talk for hours about Paul Skenes. You know, I know, we all know that Paul Skenes is just special. He is special. And it is not lost on me that the number of times that we get to see Paul Skenes in an LSU uniform are dwindling. Hopefully, we'll get a few more opportunities to see Paul Skenes. But that being said, I mean, he was just absolutely lights out as usual. The rest of the pitching on Saturday night, the good and the bad, Gavin Guidry comes in relief of Paul Skenes in the 8th inning, first pitch, and it was a 3-run dinger by the Tennessee Vols to put the first runs on the board for Tennessee on Saturday night. Look, here's my thing with the decision to bring in Gavin Guidry. I always say, in any sport, really, baseball, football, I say it more so with football. I think it applies in any sport. Just because it didn't work out doesn't mean it was the wrong decision. And on the other side of the coin, just because it did work out doesn't make it the right decision. For example, I'll go back to the Alabama game. Brian Kelly deciding to go for 2 in overtime against Alabama was the right decision. And it's easy for me to say that. It's easier for any of us to say that because it worked and you beat Alabama. Even if it didn't work, even if LSU didn't convert on that 2-point attempt, I still would have said that was the right decision. I still would have said, hey, man, you got to go for 2 there. It's against Alabama. It's a really neck and neck game. You don't want to risk it. End it there. And if it doesn't work, then damn, it doesn't work. Continue the 2-point conversion plays in practice. Continue hammering those home. But it was the right decision because it was the right decision, not just because it worked. I think that putting Gavin Guidry in there was the right decision because he's been so nails coming in late games and needing to be clutch. It has seemed like throughout the postseason, Gavin Guidry is not bothered by the moment, which is astonishing for him being so young. But it doesn't seem that he's ever, the moment is ever too big for Gavin Guidry. And I think that was putting Gavin Guidry in relief of Paul Skenes was kind of a nod to that. When it was announced that Wes Johnson was taking the head job at Georgia at the end of this season, Gavin Guidry knocked on Jay Johnson's door and said, hey, doesn't matter who's calling the pitches, I'm still going to be throwing them for strikes. That's the kind of attitude that Gavin Guidry has. And I think that was the kind of attitude that the relief pitcher needs to have coming into that game. Is just get in there, get the work done, be gritty, throw strikes, get outs, get out of there, and move on to Wake Forest. That's not what you got from Gavin Guidry. He gave up a 3-run bomb. And that sucks. I still don't think it was the wrong decision. But then Riley Cooper comes in and he stepped up and was nails when LSU needed him to be. Only gave up 1 hit, struck out 2, closed out the game, send it to Monday. That's what LSU needed. They got it from Riley Cooper. Not a great night for Gavin Guidry. Get over it, get past it, move forward, and then be nails when you need to be nails for LSU against Wake Forest and potentially getting into the next game in Omaha for LSU. So I think overall, solid pitching day, 1 smudge from Gavin Guidry. I still don't think it was the wrong decision. But hey, you are more than welcome to disagree with me on that. Coming up next, I want to get into the difference. The LSU difference in Omaha. We'll get into that coming up next. But before we do that, I want to tell you about FanDuel. Y'all know how much I love FanDuel, and baseball season is in full swing, pun intended. And there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. So just go to fanduel.com/locked on to join today. Look, I'm from St. Louis, born and raised in St. Louis, born and raised a diehard St. Louis Cardinals fan. I love my birds. That team made me fall in love with sports. But I will tell you, as long as the Cardinals are not playing the Mets, bet against the Cardinals. It hurts me to say that, but you know what? It's the truth. Bet against my birds. They are not looking good at all this season. But if they're playing the Mets, then I would say, yeah, that's a pretty safe bet. Bet on the Cardinals. So don't miss your chance to snag a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to fanduel.com/locked on to sign up. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball, trademarks used with permission. Well, thanks again for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Everydayers, coming up tomorrow on the podcast, we'll have a full breakdown of hopefully what is LSU's win against Wake Forest. We'll have a breakdown of all of the action in the second round of games in Omaha and what comes next for LSU. So you will not want to miss that coming up on tomorrow's podcast. I think that each individual team in Omaha, and maybe that's even a stretch, I would say there's about 3 or 4 teams that I can kind of highlight and circle in Omaha, and I'll say that's the edge that this team has. That's the difference that this team has. Tennessee, for example. I live in Nashville, do sports talk radio in Nashville. We talk, a little bit of Vols here and there. I think the difference with Tennessee is their bullpen. Tennessee has, 3 or even 4, maybe even 5 MLB ready pitchers in that bullpen, in that rotation. I would say that's the Tennessee edge. That's the Tennessee difference. I think LSU has their own edge and their own difference. And I think that was highlighted on Saturday night. And it's what LSU is going to have, not just tonight against Wake Forest, but they're going to have it to carry them through the entirety of Omaha for LSU to potentially clinch a national title this season. LSU's edge is the bottom of the batting order. It's what we've seen it really all season long, but it's been really clutch and really noticeable all postseason long. If you ask an average college baseball fan who plays for LSU, well, just name a couple players that play for LSU. They'll probably say Dylan Cruz. They'll probably say Tommy White. And rightfully so, because those two dudes are elite. Those are the guys that everyone knows. Dylan Cruz comes up to bat, and you know. You say the name Dylan Cruz, even the most casual baseball fans probably say, oh, yeah, that's that guy. That's that insane baseball player for LSU, isn't it? That's that guy who's likely going to be the #1 overall pick in the MLB draft, right? You would be correct. Everybody knows Dylan Cruz, rightfully so. Same thing with Tommy White. He was loud, boisterous, gets it done, effective at the plate. And those two guys, offensively, are massive assets for LSU. I don't need to tell you that. You know that already. It cannot be overstated enough how important those two are to this team, both offensively and defensively. But the difference for LSU is that they can be so clutch in games, and they can win games that they need to win, like they did on Saturday night, because of the production from guys that aren't named Dylan Cruz or Tommy White. Look at the game on Saturday. Brayden Jobert. Ask a casual college baseball fan who Brayden Jobert is. They would probably have no idea. And that's no slight to Brayden Jobert. That is it's nothing disrespectful whatsoever to Brayden Jobert in the slightest. It just goes to show that even the guys that, men on the street, I say men meaning, people on the street, they may not recognize, but he had 3 hits and a home run against Tennessee. He was able to hit a dinger and get an insurance run that really at least made me feel better going into the top of the 9th against Tennessee. Gavin Dugas, Another home run against Tennessee on Saturday. It's these guys throughout the postseason. Hayden Travinski, Brayden Jobert, Gavin Dugas. The guys not named Dylan Cruz or Trey Morgan or Tommy White, as special and as important as those guys are. LSU's ability to create offense, to get runs at the top of the batting order, all the way through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 is the difference. Saw that on Saturday night against Tennessee. Once you got to the bottom of Tennessee's batting order, I sat back and I relaxed. Wasn't too worried about it. But not too worried about it at all. There is no point in LSU's batting order that you can just sit back and relax, even if it's guys that aren't on the marquee. Even if it's a Brayden Jobert, a guy that isn't the face of college baseball, but man, oh man, does he show up when this team needs him. And he's not the only one. So I think that's going to be the LSU difference. It's not just who's hitting first, it's also who's hitting last. Because they can all get on base. Because they can all hit dingers. And they're all what I like to call run creators. They're all guys that can be a threat offensively. You can never sit back and relax in this LSU batting order. Tennessee didn't really have that as much. If this team is going to get far, if this team is going to recognize its potential, and I think its potential is a national title, it's not just going to be the guys that you know. It's not just going to be the Tommy Whites or the Dylan Cruzes or the Paul Skenes. It's going to be the other guys as well. And I think that's really exciting to watch. I think it's so fun as a fan to watch that. And I think above all else, it's what this team needs. And it's important. This team likes to play the long ball. This team doesn't have the best bullpen in Omaha. And that's the truth. It's better. We all feel better about this pitching now than we did a month ago. Go back to the Mississippi State series. My goodness, I almost had a hernia because of how bad the pitching was. I think this team is in a much different place now. Still not elite. You at least feel better. Still not elite. But when you got guys top to the bottom of the lineup that can create runs, it's all right if you give up 5 runs because you'll score 7. Coming up next, a big ball game tonight. LSU, Wake Forest in Omaha. What do you need to know to get you set for first pitch? We'll get into that coming up next. Well, thanks again for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. Big ball game against Wake Forest today. Wake Forest, the number 1 overall seed heading into this game. Wake Forest took down Stanford 3-2 in the first game. Stanford eliminated by Tennessee in the first game on Monday. The loser of this Wake Forest LSU game will play Tennessee tomorrow. A little bit of a preview. Floyd is on the mound for LSU. I don't think that's a surprise. I think that LSU is kind of settling into their Paul Skenes to Floyd Friday, Saturday night kind of rotation. On the mound for Wake Forest is Josh Hartle, a sophomore lefty. Now, immediately right off the bat, no pun intended, I don't love going up against a lefty. I really don't. I think that it's a misconception that LSU can't or doesn't play very well against lefties. But I do always go back to that Arkansas series. That first game against Arkansas, Paul Skenes is on the mound, and you lost that game against 2 lefties. So I don't love to see that. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're LSU. It doesn't matter if you're Butt Crack State University. I mean, hitting against lefties it's tough. It's hard, especially a pitcher of that caliber. First team All ACC as a sophomore, second team All American, Golden Spike semifinalist, has a 2.8 ERA going into this game. He's got 131 strikeouts and just 20 walks on the season. So it's going to be tough. It's a tough pitching matchup, and this is a team that can freaking rake. I mean, it seemed like in those 2 games against Alabama in the Winston-Salem Super Regional, overall in the weekend, felt like Wake Forest beat Alabama like 100-0. This team can hit, this team can pitch, and you're going up against one of their best pitchers. It's their number 2, but he's still pretty darn good. So it's going to be a challenge. Absolutely. And I mean, Wake Forest is very similar that they have got sluggers all across that starting lineup. But if you lose tonight, your job just gets that much more difficult. You got to get back in action tomorrow. Got to play Tennessee, a team that you've already played. A team that I think it's a team that I think you can lose to on any given day. It's a team that I think you can beat on any given day too, but just make it easier on yourself. Get the day off tomorrow. Don't fall into the loser's bracket. Once you do that, now you got to scratch and claw your way back, and your bullpen starts to get depleted. Make your job easier on yourself. Win tonight, get the day off, and then move forward, and you are that much closer to a College World Series final. And I know that's a whole lot easier said than done. And I know that there's been a lot of talk about, being in Omaha, the quote unquote idea of like being there before, of not being so sensitive or overwhelmed by the lights and the big stage of Omaha. A lot of people have looked at this matchup and said, well, LSU is a team that's always there. LSU is a team that's, Omaha and LSU are almost synonymous. Wake Forest is new to this. Wake Forest just 2 years ago, I don't know, maybe won like 3 games, and that's me being so dramatic, and that's not true, but you get what I mean. LSU is a perennial program, and Wake Forest isn't. But I don't care about the history of these two programs. I don't care that LSU historically is an elite program, because that doesn't matter today. Because, of course, there are individual players on this LSU roster that have been in Omaha before, but it's not like this team has been in Omaha every single year together as a unit. There's still a level of newness. It's not like Wake Forest is going into this game feeling like they're the underdogs. They're the number 1 overall seed. They took your throne with the number 1 overall team in the country in the second half of the season. So I don't want to hear LSU's been there before and Wake Forest hasn't. I don't care. To these individual players, in this pitching matchup, it doesn't matter. What it really comes down to me, what Ty Floyd are you going to get tonight? Are you going to get the Ty Floyd that is throwing strikes, that can strike guys out, that might give up a dinger or two, but he can get, right back up there. He can recoup. He can stay focused and not get phased by a hit or a home run? Or are you going to get the Ty Floyd who doesn't really have command of his pitches, who can't find the strike zone, or it's walk after walk after walk? It's 2 very different Ty Floyds, and we have seen the better Ty Floyd as of late. But I think that is one aspect of it. And the second thing here, too, is as I just went on and on and on, bloviating about how great the bottom of the lineup is, you're going to also have to get some production from the top of the lineup as well. You're going to need some production from Dylan Cruz and Tommy White and this entire lineup. It can't just be 7, 8, 9. You got to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the mix as well. I thought defensively, for the most part, LSU looked pretty solid against Tennessee on Saturday. You're going to want to continue that. Trey Morgan had an insane play at first base in the beginning of the game against Tennessee. Plays like that. Be clutch defensively. Production from the top of the bottom of the order. And also the Ty Floyd that you're getting. I mean, Wake Forest is a good team. But so is LSU. I feel like there's this perception, and maybe it's just from the people that I've talked to and my circles. I feel like there's this perception that Wake Forest is just going to walk into the College World Series final. Maybe, but I'm not giving up that easy. There was a texter on our text line of my national radio show today, and it said something along the lines of, has Caroline already accepted defeat, or is she holding out hope for her Tigers tonight? And I'm just thinking, where in the world did this perception come from? That just because Wake Forest is coming in as the number 1 overall seed, they're not handed anything. I'm sorry, but that's a pretty damn good LSU team. And also, if we're going to look at the history of number 1 overall seeds, it doesn't bode very well for Wake Forest. So I think that this is going to be a tough fought game. It is. It's 2 good teams. But also, it's Omaha. Every game should and will be tough fought. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. Every day is tomorrow on the podcast, a full breakdown of LSU, Wake Forest, and Omaha tonight. Enjoy watching the game tonight. Everyone be safe. Enjoy it. Get a couple Jello shots on me for all of you people with the boots on the ground in Omaha. Just absolutely cleaning it up in the Rocco's Jello Shot Challenge. Enjoy the game. I'll chat with y'all tomorrow. Full breakdown tomorrow on Locked On LSU.